Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the Chad of 25 and L, the season champion.
Yes, I am the king of 25.
You are. You are the season 1 champion.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to take home the championship to the United States of America for the 25 and L season. All the other guys are losers.
They are losers. Some of them got scores below 5 out of 10 on average.
Can't believe it. Can't believe it. Pete, thanks for putting the gauntlet together. I really enjoyed it. It was an awesome thing. And yeah, it's super entertaining. Super entertaining. Love the idea. How'd you come up with it?
I don't know. I was just like, oh, here's just another like samey thing I always do. I'll just review hands and call it Gauntlet and get the editor to make a medieval intro. And then for some reason it just took off and people love it. I think you've just given away the game though, because now you've taken your glasses off and you're speaking like you're not a moron, and it doesn't really work because the Chad has to be a complete moron. Come on. That's better. I don't think you'll be able to keep that for the whole video.
Confessing my love for you, Pete. I brought you a rose today. I know you stay up at night thinking about my game and how good it was in those 10 hands. This is for you. I'm going to mail it to you. It'll be there in a week.
Thank you. I'll just reach through the webcam.
Hand it over.
My unrequited love is no more unrequited, you could say. Is that the expression? Unrequited, something like that.
I don't know.
Yes.
I'm a Chad. I don't have to know that stuff.
You don't ever pine for anyone that doesn't want you, because by definition, you're Chad. Like, you get whatever you want.
That's correct. That's correct.
So when you were growing up,
Chad.
When you were growing up and stuff, did Chad? Has it always meant that, or is Chad like that meaning of Chad? It's quite a new thing, right?
It is like it came up in the last maybe decade or so, where it just became this character, just like how Karen's a character for like women. You know, it's a super stereotypical because it's such like the bro-ish name. You know, like, oh, you're gonna go do a kegger with your new friend Chad. Like it's just such a Chad. Like I don't know, just sucks.
There's no one called Chad in the UK, really. I mean, there are, but like hardly anyone. Yeah. If you're called Chad in the UK, you're probably called Chadley, and then you're like a really posh kid that was just always known as Chadley instead of Chad.
Yeah. I was almost named Chadwick, like officially, but I don't know.
Maybe it's Chadwick.
Yeah, there's a lot more Chads in America, for sure. In America. But it's definitely a stereotype, and I'm gonna have to live with it forever. It's gonna last forever.
Yeah, you're embracing it though.
For this, it's nice to be a Chad and to be the first champion of the Gauntlet.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're going to do a 50NL season after that. We're going to have Bennett Babby on, the famous high-stakes YouTuber, to do a special one-off 10KNL or whatever the hell he plays. Maybe it's 2KNL edition of Gauntlet. But yeah, next after this, it's 50NL, guys. So do get your requests in on Discord. We're going to set up a channel for that shortly. But let's talk about this, Graf. Let's talk about your poker journey, Chad, because this is not the first time that we have spoken to one another. Forgive me, I don't remember when I coached you. I think it was ages ago, but maybe you have some memory of like roughly when that was.
Late 21, early 22, I think. Something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what's your poker journey been since then?
Man, do you want me to just since we coached, or do you want to go through the whole thing? Like,
well, let's go through the whole thing, but like kind of like speed version, because it's YouTube after all.
Yeah, of course. Started when I was in high school, played a little bit during Moneymaker, played some on Full Tilt Poker. Then I played in college some, quit forever. COVID came. I picked up during COVID, lost money. Actually, no, I won at the beginning because the games were soft, and then I started losing, and I was like, I have to get better. And then I hired a pile of coaches until I came to you, and you have been my shining light since, Pete.
That's awesome to hear. Let's get that rose back out. The love is flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand that you have you done any Carrot Corner stuff outside of coaching, or is it just the coaching you did?
I did some coaching. I did Grade E, and I'm a subscriber to your subscription.
Cool.
I'm not Grade E. I did cash injection.
Right.
And then I subscribed like for the monthly thing now.
Cool. So you've done like the exploitative stuff, and there's a bunch of cool series, obviously, that you'll be working your way through. What's your favorite subscriber content, just for anyone that's subscribed and wondering what to watch first?
I mean, I I love Akshar stuff,
Mhm.
but I know him. So
Mm.
probably other than that, the Fold Equity Radar I think is really cool.
Yeah, Spencer's series on where fold equity is high, where it's low, how to figure that out. He's got a new series called True EV Pillars coming out soon. If you guys want to subscribe to Carrot Corner, it's only $49.99 a month. You can do so with the link in the description. But anyway, let's get to some hands. Let's
Let's do it.
talk about
Let's do it.
how you've been playing since you won the gauntlet. Are you an infallible 25 and L god? Or do you play some hands
You're
like
gonna
shit? Let's find out.
you're gonna see some dog doo doo in these hands.
I hope so.
I mean, I came back and I just was a knit my whole career, and I've been slowly trying to unknit myself. So I just kind of like was like, hey man, I'm just gonna spew a little bit and call down in spots where I normally wouldn't call down. Like before, it was like a crime to call down with second pair for me, and I'm doing that more. I'm also running more bluffs, but because of that, like I tilt farther over the edge where I'm like, there's some spews probably, and there's some light calls that I shouldn't make. Like you saw in some of the hands where I call the sevens that turned the flush in my gauntlet. Like I kind of knew that that was a light call, but I'm just like making myself do that as a like reprogramming thing.
Yeah, it's like an ice bath. Like until you call down and lose a bunch of times and then get over it, you're always going to have that fear. And like one of the best ways to face a fear, both in life and in poker, is to voluntarily, that's the key word, put yourself in a situation where the worst case scenario that you're afraid of can and will happen to you at some frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're never doing that, you're basically telling your fear that it's right. And you're basically saying, yeah, that thing is to be avoided perpetually, you know? So definitely the right approach.
That is a that is a great thing. Like whenever I was for the longest time, I thought if I called a bet, I'd have to win more than half the time.
Mhm.
But then I heard that like you're calling a bet, you're losing more than half the time. Like dealing with that emotionally as a person, like
Mhm.
really sucks if you're
Mhm.
not used to it.
Yeah, they're expecting you to come on as the Chad and be extremely high level, and you're just like, guys, when you call a bet, it's less than pot, or even if it's more than pot, you don't have to win half the time. But that is like
Right.
it's such a missed thing, right? Like people just
Yeah.
miss that because the human psyche is in life. If you do something that's more bad than good, you're making mistakes, right? You're harming yourself or others.
Oh
So
yeah.
don't do that.
Yep.
All right,
Mm-hmm.
let's get to some hands.
This is Ace King.
So this hand didn't work out. But let's talk about it. So we have Ace King under the gun, and we open and we get called by the cutoff, and the flop is Ace King 5. And we actually decide to go for check raise in a spot. So you mentioned when we paused the recording there that you've been working with Akshar. I know that Akshar's like me is a proponent of like not just range betting flops and not just like dismissing flop as a mundane street, but actually thinking about what might be best on flop. We're deep here. Did you think, is this like a new thing in your game, like check raising this hand instead of just like betting small like so many people do, or is this something you've done for a while?
It's been a long time since I've actually had coaching from Akshar, and I'm very simplified in my flop approach, and I check a lot out of position. So I'm basically checking range here. And I'm working more on like turn and river, and then flop. I'm just gonna eventually get to like
Mm-hmm.
it's rare that I'm not checking this flop here. Like maybe if this guy is like really fishy, but I mean it's a nice check raise, and this is gonna get checked back a lot too, and then I'll probably go big and then overbet. Like that's kind of the plan. Like I
Yeah,
can eventually bet big.
right. And I think it's a sort of board where if they have ace X, which is the thing that's going to call like the three big bets or whatever is going to like be the thing you make money from, that's probably
Mhm.
going to over stab on the flop. If villain is a
Yep.
fish, like if villain is a cutoff cold calling fish, which they often are when they cold call, because some regs play three bet or fold, then they're going to bet a lot of those hands anyway. This is one of the boards against regs where I would build a betting range just because it's going to be a very high check back frequency by in
Mhm.
position objective here. But against recreationals, they do stab too much and too merged, and then getting that check raise in is nice. And I know that Akshar does like lines like this, which is why I just asked that. But yeah, okay, so we do that. The seven of clubs comes, the brickiest brick. We go for a turn bet here, which I like. I think this is fine. When we are uber deep, we might want to start thinking at some point, like, where is the line for top two? Like if we do put in our entire stack with this top two, are we still happy? And I think the answer to that is very run out dependent, right? So villain calls and we get this nine of
Mhm.
clubs run out. And the question is now, like, what is the best true EV line here, right? We could talk about like what theory would do, and it probably would. I think it would size down with this combo now, a bit because
Yeah.
we're blocking one pair and two pair, which we're trying to get called by. We're unblocking flushes,
Mhm.
and we're unblocking
Mhm.
the set of fives, right? Which is the only set that villain really has on this node. So given our hands properties here, I wouldn't be surprised to see a block bet in GTO here or half pot or something up there. We go a bit bigger. What's your thinking on the river here?
All right. My thinking is this is one of the weaker players in the pool, and I don't think he's going to have two clubs to call a check raise with on flop. And I don't think he's going to value bet thinly enough on this river because he'll be scared of a flush, and I'm going to call a bet from a flush anyway, so I might as well bet this for a decent size and probably plan to bet fold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of betting and not checking. So I think like the first thing that people get wrong here, and we've seen a lot of this in Gauntlet, is people checking because a scary looking card comes. Now I kind of agree with you that when they bet the flop big here, like they did, they're not going to have a ton of club. Now if this is a fish, the danger is that they have king X of clubs because they just bet merged or whatever. But because the bet's kind of bigger and not smaller, I think I expect to see more hands like ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 5
Mhm.
than hands like Jack 10 of clubs or King X of clubs or something like that. So I kind of agree. And when he calls a check raise, I think we can safely remove most of the club that's not paired, which would just leave us with like the weird spewy King X of clubs and then some 5X of clubs. So
Mhm.
I think I agree that villain has way less flushes on this node than it might appear at face value. One issue is that when they have ace X, they're likely to be a bit more elastic to your sizing when they have one pair, right? And we are, for the most part, trying
Yeah.
to get called by one pair. We don't really see more than like two combos of ace 5 here. There is a 7 and ace 9 suited, which is a few combos, like three combos a piece, or two a piece actually, when you hold the ace. It's not many combos. And then you have like the odd flush, the odd pocket five. So if you bomb this, I think
Mhm.
you might become a dog against the range here, unless they're really
Yeah.
stationary. My instinct is to go a bit smaller than this, is to go like 40% pot, 50% pot, something like that. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to be paid by a range of one pair, but it is very dependent on how bad and sticky villain is. They do call here. And yeah, I think we
Yeah.
could have sized this down a little bit, but I think you've got the right idea here that you definitely want to be betting some size here and not just like going into your shell and sort of like auto checking just based on the fact that a club came.
Yeah. Yeah. And something I've been working on my game is like, what is the most I can bet here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I allowed to bet is the most? That's something I'm trying to like also shift from like knit to also the sizing scheme. So I'm like, I think the most I can bet is like B60. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what I thought in the moment. But I also think that what your logic does make sense.
Yeah, and it is very villain dependent. I just think against like
Yeah.
most players that are thinking in deep, they're just going to be very reluctant to call big bets here with one pair, basically, which is why I
You're
would
right.
size this down a bit and try and get more of those crying calls. I think it's a more elastic spot due to stack size and river texture than most spots are against fish. But yeah, not a
Uh,
bad, not
one
bad by you. Mm-hmm.
one question. What do you think about like the ripping it for a bluff on the river here?
If we had like Jack 10 of diamonds or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, what you probably want to do with that hand is find a sizing that one pair is going to fold to. And you might want to build your bluff size around that in terms of true EV, because the question is like, well, villain
Mhm.
might have some flushes, right? And if you go all in, you maximize the pain. And how likely is the fish to fold two pair plus, right? There's a big threshold difference in a fish's mind between one pair and two pair plus, right? So my thought is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
while all in is like clearly like an okay bluff size in theory here, because you have some flushes and they don't have that many after they big bet flop and then call, they just have like 5-4 clubs or something. In practice, you'll be called by two pair plus almost always
Yeah. You're
from a
right.
fish, and you
You're
can
right.
make one pair fold for cheaper. So I don't think it's the right true EV line.
Great point.
Okay, cool. So you've written some stuff down here, Chad, as well. You've written down goals, you've written down leaks. So you've said here, scared of players under leaks that I think are better than me. I just freeze and don't know
Yeah.
what to do. Is that still a problem for you? Freezing?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's I posted a hand on the Discord actually of this guy who I just think is like way like by far the best player in my pool. And I just like try to avoid him. And when I'm in a hand, I'm kind of feel like I'm forced to play against him. I just shell up and I'm like making all kinds of mistakes. He probably thinks I'm terrible, which I mean I'm not like the best, right? But like
Well,
Playing
you are
against
the
him, I'm
best.
just like awful.
Apparently, you
Oh
are the
wait, I
best.
am. I am the best in my pool.
Yep.
Greatest
Maybe in the world.
in maybe the world. Sorry, I
Sorry, I derailed our mental game lesson.
forgot
Yeah.
I forgot I was the best poker player ever.
Now the audience is like the few trolls that were like, "This guy's an asshole," or like realizing that you're actually an okay guy. They're now like, if they're still watching, they're
I don't
realizing
know.
that.
Maybe it's like a double thing where I'm like pretending to be an okay guy, but I'm really an asshole.
Well, you're pretending one way or the other. The audience can figure
True.
out which way. So you
We
feel a
don't
bit
know.
like you're a rabbit in the headlights. You go into freeze mode when you're
Yeah.
against those
Oh yeah.
players. What do you think that freeze mode is trying to protect you from? Just before we get into this pocket threes hand, like if that has a function, what's it trying to avoid? Because freezing is avoidance, right? So what do you think it's avoiding?
Yeah. I think that like at best, like if I'm like on my A game, I'm losing to them pre-rake, and we're just losing to the rake. So like, why am I even fighting this guy? I used to really enjoy fighting it, but if like I'm trying to win, it's
Mm-hmm.
different. It depends on, I guess, I don't know. I've realized that like the money's made from fish, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's the thought process. But I'm not
Mm,
sure. But he's also like, I don't know if this player's really caught on to it yet and has bullied me yet. But like if he does, then I obviously have to fight back, right?
mm. Right. Are you afraid of anything on an emotional level? Like, is there a scenario that you would feel damaged by, like, or vulnerable to on an emotional level? Like, what could happen against this reg that might make you feel shit?
I've got to think about that. Some I can't.
Mm.
I don't. I have not explored that part of my psyche yet.
Okay.
I'm trying to.
Well, you don't
We
have to
can.
explore it now, but what I'd say is that given
Yeah.
you've written it here under leaks, is that you're scared, right? And you're
Yeah.
freezing. These aren't just, I have a logical argument to do with Rake about why I don't want to battle with someone. That's
Yeah.
not what's going on, in my opinion, here. I would invite you to, we'll get you back on the show on another date, right? We'll do, I think the Chad just should be a character that comes back to Carrot Corner at some point.
Yeah.
Um, and I'd like the Chad to explore his inner, whatever the antithesis of Chad is, right? Like the more vulnerable persona, the inner child.
The soft,
Yeah.
the romantic Chad.
Yeah, well, or maybe the one who's afraid. Maybe the one who's like, there's a little bit of an afraid, scared child in all of us, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
what is it? What, like, program is being triggered against the good reg that's maybe to do with him being better than you, or to do with a way it could make you feel, and where's that really coming from, and what are we trying to avoid? Because I think there's something deeper going on there that's subconscious. I don't think that's just like a rational argument about trying to avoid the reg. So we'll come back to that. We'll explore it. You can maybe even let it simmer just now, and maybe you'll say to me, Pete, I've had some thoughts on that by the end of this video, or maybe we'll talk about it next time, right? But with mental game coaching, I don't like to rush it. I like to get people
Yeah.
thinking about what's really going on there on a deep level, and then at some point we face it, right? And we say, fuck it, we're going to look at this part of ourselves because we're aware of it enough to have written it down here as a leak, so we're going to address it at some point. But
I'm going to say one sentence, and it
yeah.
may be that he puts me in many difficult spots that makes me feel like I'm a bad player.
Mm-hmm.
And then that maybe spirals into like some form of tilt.
Yep. So very often we're trying to avoid a future emotional state when we freeze or run away, right? Whether it's avoidance by freezing or avoidance by literally running. It's not the thing that's the issue, but it's the unpleasant emotional state that we know will be brought on by the thing.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
And there, what you've described as your self-image changing from the guy that's having fun, that's playing poker, that's doing what he loves. You were saying earlier how you love the game and you just think it's fascinating. Yeah. Your self-image changing from that playful guy in his element, enjoying things and winning, to this guy that's like being, the spotlight's being shone on the fact that he's not actually good and he's not actually a winner and he's actually a loser. This is like the kind of self-projection here that in that moment I'm a loser, right? That's like, it could even be that strong. And it's about saying, fuck it, I can be put in a bad spot by a good player where I'm forced to make more mistakes, and I can still be the third best player in the pool, and I can still be winning at 4 BB per 100, and I can still be really happy. Like, I know there's people out there that are like way better than me at business. I'm way better than me at poker, but I can still be like a fucking successful business / poker coaching guy, right? At the same time. So it's like seeing that relativity, that there's someone better than us at something, it's just part of life. That's just inevitable. And it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
we're not still fucking good, or we're not enjoying ourselves, or we're not like doing a good job. But
Yeah.
have a think about it more next time it comes up. I would say open yourself up to whatever those feelings really are, and try and really like feel them. And if this guy does win a pot from you, actually really that's a great opportunity. As Jared Alderman would say, mental game coach on our side, it's a great opportunity to learn by actually tapping into those feelings and being like, what are they talking about right now? Like, what is that inner state and what does it mean? So yeah, we can do more
I'm
work
gonna
on that
face
for
my
sure.
fears, Pete, in the future.
As you put on the glasses in the future,
As
hide
I'm gonna
behind the
face my
glasses.
fears, I'm gonna freaking spew into this rag, Pete, and then I'm gonna blame you for it.
Excellent. All right. So pocket threes, and I'll come back to some of the points you've written down here in this video if I think they're relevant or whatever. There's a lot here. I won't read out everything you've written. We'll do hands. We'll do some of these. This hand we've opened. We've been 3-bet. Very close spot. We could fold right away. One argument for folding right away here could just be that they're not polarized enough. They're actually overly linearized in the big blind, right? You probably come across that, and therefore you can just let this go. Like I'm actually fairly tempted just to let this go because of the fact that I don't think I have as much equity here as I would in theory, and I'm in a kind of shitty rake spot, right? I'm playing 25 in LACR, which is like not the worst rake environment out of all the rake environments, but it's 25 in L game. So okay, so we face 7 big blinds and we decide to slow play the flop. So let's talk about this first juncture. What are you perplexed by that? You look puzzled. Are you surprised by your play here?
I am. I fully expected me to just like raise off. The reason I called the three, but I think it was because we're a little bit deep. I do see your point in folding. I am surprised I didn't raise. So maybe there's some kind of like a read that I was thinking in the moment. I
Mm,
think raise is better
mm,
against pool
I
right
agree.
away because like you're gonna get paid by eights plus overcard's gonna come, diamond's gonna come. I mean, like every turn is kind of like action killing here.
Yep. And maybe the fact that they are overly linearized here and have more
Mhm.
combos of nines through aces than they should have as a percentage of range, and have less combos of, I don't know, 10, Jack 10 off or something, or 10-9 off or something, means that we want to fast play, right? Because we want to fast play more against mergy or stronger ranges, and we want to slow play more against polarized or bluffy or low equity bluff ranges. But yeah, people are just betting too much of an equity driven range here, I think. They might be range betting, but if they are, as you say, action killer cards will come against the top of that range, and I think we're less likely to win a bunch of money by people triple barrel bluffing us here than we are in GTO anyway. So makes sense.
Mhm.
We do slow play, they do check back. We get the ace river. Let's talk about the ace of diamonds river. This is a key spot. What should we do here and why? What do you think?
Um, I I hope I think I should bet B75 ish, something like that. A lot of his check back range is going to contain ace X that gets paid by like that kind of sizing, and I don't think that pool checks back enough flush draws on turn here.
Okay, so what we're saying is that we think we've got enough equity to value bet, right?
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
agree. And if we did value bet, I also agree that like a big bet like pot or B75 or something is probably the right kind of vicinity. I'll ask you another question though. What do you think your opponent's range is like here? Like, what kind of hands do you think are here high frequency? What kind of hands do you think aren't in the range? And then what does that overall picture look like?
He's still got air, a ton of air,
Right.
like random Broadway cards. I think that's a large part of range.
Agree.
Depends on how much offsuit he's three betting pre flop. We've got like some single pair hands, like I don't know, 7, 8 of spades. He may have checked back. And then like a good amount of ace X that wants to try to get the showdown.
What do you think
That's
Ace
like the
X is going
most
to
of it.
do?
Yeah.
What do you think like Ace Queen, Ace King, Ace Jack, Ace 10 is going to do if you check here?
Are you getting me into like they're going to value on themselves? Yeah.
Well, are they
Like, are they
value
going to
owning
bet for value?
themselves? Are they value owning themselves against your range? Like, we're staring at a set of threes here, but they don't think you've got a set of threes. When you check the river,
Yep.
they don't think you've got a flush because most people don't slow play this node, right? Like at these stakes. So
Hmm.
I do
Hmm.
think that Ace X will bet the river. Not always. There will be some times when like villain checks back Ace 4 and they would have called a bet and we've missed out on value. And if villain is very passive, then I can get on board with betting. But you've described the opponent's range as not being mergy, not containing lots of like underpair, mainly being Ace X plus or air,
Yeah.
right? That's how you've described the range.
Yeah.
So if we go back to what we said a few moments ago, that when villain is very polarized, we might actually want to slow play. I think you've inverted this. I think you should fast play the flop, but slow play the river here. I think you should go for the
Yeah.
check on the river here.
You're right. Mhm.
because I do think ace-x is very likely to value bet, especially if you check in tempo here. They'll tank for like 80 seconds. Um, and I think that they're very likely to bluff this node a lot as well because the ace is good for their range and they just arrive here with a shit ton of Broadway. So I love that you did check. I mean, you played this hand on the river as exactly as
Oh
I would.
wow,
And now we should
checked.
raise for sure. I mean, again, I'm sensing like that what you're doing is you're raising your equity. You're kind of saying, I don't think you've got a flush, buddy. You're putting on your glasses and you're like, therefore, my hand is worth a bunch of money.
A lot.
And
Yeah.
while I agree, I'm again just wondering, like, what is the sweet spot here? Like, where do we just start to pillage like infinite fold equity? And I think we might be in danger of doing that here, while simultaneously maximizing the losses against pocket aces and the rare flush. These are not common hands. The problem is someone with ace queen here, which is what I think villain normally has, is like ace x or kings with like some thin value like that, usually ace x. Unless villain is like a whale or station, I think your fold equity is through the roof with this particular sizing. So I might just go something a bit more normal that doesn't spike the fold equity so much with this hand. Again, similar
Yeah.
criticism to like the first hand.
Yeah.
Although it did get paid. But there's the pocket aces.
There it is.
It's not that
That
we
happened to me a few times. Yeah.
it's not that we
Sorry.
don't get called by worse, like we do. It's just like we're beginning to reduce our equity when called now, closer to 50% or something. We don't really want to do that. We'd rather have, like, if we can raise 4x here, make a small raise in percentage pot terms and have 75 or 80% equity when called, we'd rather do that than be a 53% favorite by going this sizing, right? So there will come a point where we just want to sort of respect that elasticity a bit when we don't, especially when we don't have the nuts and there is that small downside. But
Hmm.
I do like
Hmm.
the general ethos of going really, really big with top of range and stuff like that. I like in general. But yeah, we need to draw the line slightly below where you're drawing it right now for value, I think.
Got it.
All right, 5-6. You've also said here, how to recover mentally after making a mistake. Played in a casino where I made a bad fold and just couldn't recover my focus for the rest of the session. This is another one of the leaks that you've written down here. So what's that like? It's like mistake tilt of some sort.
Yeah. It's like when I make an error, when I play a hand and afterwards I'm like, man, I just blundered that. Like it is so hard for me to focus on the session that I'm currently still playing. Like I'm just like so steamed from like, and it's like if I get unlucky, it's fine. But if I deem that I made a mistake, then I'm like, I'm so terrible at this game. Like this, I'm never gonna be good. I'm just in the spiral of like negativity where I can't even like follow the action sometimes on
Yep.
the table. It's
Yep.
major like mental stuff.
Yep. Also my biggest leak. In bridge I do this a lot. If I'm in a bridge session with my wife and like we're having a good tournament or something and then I fuck up a board, I might just be like completely in my own head beating the crap out of myself for the rest of the set or whatever, and that's terrible. And I do it to a lesser extent in poker because I'm a bit more hardened in poker maybe, but yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
super hard one because while your self-esteem is plummeting and while you're judging yourself, it's nearly impossible to be in the moment and to think freely. And the only thing we can do there is try to process that feeling of regret and try and feel that disappointment. And instead of trying to fight it and instead of trying to rise up and be like, no, it's not good enough, and being an authoritarian, just suffer just suffer the pain of it for a second, right? Because what you're doing, it's actually your reaction to that disappointment in yourself. That's the problem. It's
Mm-hmm.
that authoritarian, strict, that's not good enough, Chad. You don't even
Yeah.
get to go back to playtime because you need to be in play mode. You need to be in child playing freely mode to do well at poker, explorative child mode, not child that's being vindicated, not child that's being, told off. So the only way to not be the child that's being told off, who can't focus on playing with the blocks, is for the parent to, take a step back and just not be so harsh. So basically, it's about just being like, man, it sucks. I'm suffering that. I'm feeling the pain of having misplayed that. I do wish I'd played it better, but it's okay. I can forgive myself and I can go back to exploring and playing with the blocks again once I've processed that. I don't think you're giving yourself the chance to process that disappointment because you're going into authoritarian self vindication, basically.
Yep. That makes sense. Cause like like I'm playing 25 and L, but like honestly, I've worked for years really hard on my poker game. And
Yep.
so it's just like, how can I be so bad when I've worked so hard
Mhm.
at this and spent so many hours studying this?
But you're not bad.
Like
Like you
I
won
put
the
a lot of
gauntlet.
effort into this game
You're
of
yeah.
mine. Yeah.
And your results are beginning to show that now. The gauntlet results, your 25 and L
Mhm.
results, probably your live results as well. And like I think your opinion of yourself in that moment when you are myopically zoomed in and blinded by that one mistake is not
Yeah.
actually a reflection of your skill level, but what you're doing is twofold. One, you're taking it to be an accurate reflection or a sufficient judgment of your skill level, and two, you're then reprimanding yourself as if it is just who you are overall. And at no point
Mhm.
there do you just get to process the fact that, man, I fucked up because of X. And it's like if you can just accept like it feels shit to have fucked up due to X, but now I'm okay. It's like not only are you okay and you can go back to thinking, but you can also use X as fuel to play better. But you have to process X, the reasons for the fuck up and the disappointment first
Yeah.
before you can then put it aside. You're getting stuck in a perpetual loop of self,
Mhm.
you know, you know, just harsh authoritarian sort of parenting of the self is how I would describe it. All right,
Yeah.
so we'll work on that too. Right, 5-6. This is obviously a GTO low frequency three bet. I don't mind
Yep.
it, against pool if you have an edge at all, especially if they're under four betting. Now the EV of calling is probably zero in
Mhm.
equilibrium or slightly winning. This is one of the hands the solver wants you to call, but the EV swing isn't much, so feel free to fold here in a high rate game. You don't have to make this defend, especially if they're under bluffing, which might be your reason for three betting in the first place, right? So making sure our reasons are consistent. If we think they're under four betting, we don't have to call the four bet when it happens in the high rate game. But now we flop the world. I think call is reasonable here. Raise is interesting too because they have a lot of combos of kings and queens and stuff like that. So like small raise here will startle them. It will lead them into the deep dark forest. You'll kind of find out what they have. If they do jam, you'll get it in against ace king and you'll flip. And if they have queens, etc., you can probably make them fold.
I did not raise in this hand because of what you said during the hand where I raised. I was like hand 8 of Gauntlet, where I raised with like 5, 6 of spades.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, I hate this. And so I was like, well, I'm in this hand. And Pete says I hated he raised, so I didn't. But I guess this is a 4 bet pot, and that was a 3 bet pot.
Vague patterning. You're taking the pattern of suited connector raising pair on flop. And I see
Yeah.
why you're doing it because that makes a strong
Yeah.
impression when like a coach that you subscribe to says, I hate your play. Yeah, they're partially doing it for the channel, for YouTube. But also, yeah, that leaves
Yeah.
an imprint. And it's hard to then say, but this is a different spot. And like, I can
Mhm.
see how it's different. That'll come in time. But yeah, it's a different spot, basically. Mm-hmm. Looks the same is not the same. That's so often the case in poker. Superficially similar, on a deep level, very different. Deuce of clubs, check, check. I might just start bluffing now. Again,
Mhm.
like, if villain has ace, queen, ace, king, okay, check back is fine for now because actually getting check jammed on here is horrific. But if villain does have kings, queens, jacks here, which is quite a lot of their range, mainly kings and queens, I do kind of want to be bluffing at some point, I think. So I quite rate our
Mhm.
fold equity. I don't rate it
Yep.
anymore so much.
Yeah.
Because queens just got there and kings isn't playing this way. So
Yeah.
now I think my opponent's range is actually ace, queen, ace, king, queens,
Mhm.
or a bluff like
Mhm.
king jack. And I think I would
Mhm.
fold because I don't think there's enough bluffs. I think it's underbluffed,
Mhm.
and I think the value range is too strong for you to want to jam here. So you said that there was a hand in here of 5-6 that might be spew. I do think this is spew. I think if this hand was on gauntlet, let's just say you ran good by this hand not making it on to gauntlet,
Yeah.
the variance of gauntlet. So
Yep.
what would
Yep.
you? So I want you to think back though to what that conversation we just had about mistake tilt. Yeah, you probably played this hand and it didn't work. You ran into top set and you probably did immediately start to reprimand yourself here, right? And think this was a mistake. So what we're going to do, we're going to make a mistake again like this in future. So how are we going to process this? Like, this is going to happen to you again, even as you get better. So what are you going to do next time?
I don't know right now.
Suffer. Step one, suffer. Let yourself suffer, right? That feeling, you're
Yeah.
feeling come in, where you're like, fuck, that's horrible. Allow it to come in.
Do I
As
just
a,
like sit out for a little bit and
yeah,
then come
maybe.
back?
But as
Yeah.
a pacifist, as a sufferer, what is a sufferer? It's someone that's having something done to them. If you suffer an earthquake, The earthquake happened to you. If you suffer a disease, the disease happened to you. You are in the
Yeah.
passive, yeah? So you don't
Yeah.
jump to this authoritarian, I'm going to use anger, I'm going to fight, I'm going to reprimand myself. You just simply suffer. That's all I want you to
Mhm.
do when this happens. I want you to accept that you're feeling shit. And I want you to feel shit for a little, a minute. You can sit out if it helps. And then, like, start to see it in the context. Like, how many mistakes do the best players in the world make? Tons. Like,
Yeah.
if you hear like Ike Haxton talk about poker, he talks about like, oh, I fucked this hand up, I fucked that hand up, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, happens. So then start to put it in
Hmm.
context and then start to forgive yourself. You could actually have a formula. Suffer passively as the sufferer, not the authoritarian parent. Start to remember that you will make mistakes and everyone makes mistakes, and then forgive yourself, and then use it as fuel, and then get back in there and start playing again. Right? You can actually have a 5-step program here. It's okay that you made
Yeah.
a mistake, even if I tell the YouTube audience they don't deserve to play the game. Everyone really deserves, well,
Yeah, man, I
most
spewed
people.
there. After that hand, I was like, this is so bad. And in game, I remember thinking like, oh, he may be turning like, medium pairs into bluffs here. And so like that's why I need to raise. Like I can't call because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bluff catching. So I need to make sure I fold out these medium pairs. And I just did not like go back to the beginning of his range. Like this is a four
Right,
bet pot,
right.
like this
Mm-hmm.
is he is so tight on his range, and I just misranged him on the river.
Yep. Multiple hoops, right? He has to 4-bet deep with a
Yeah.
hand. Well, it's not that deep, it's a little bit deep. He has to 4-bet deep with a
Mhm.
hand like jacks or tens or nines or something, which people don't do enough. And then he has
Yeah.
to like bluff the river with that hand. So it's like when you ask for one unlikely thing to be
Mhm.
true, like you're kind of clutching at straws, but when you ask for two to be true in the same hand, yeah, probably
Mhm.
not, right? But yeah, that's just the
Yep.
technical explanation. That isn't going to help you massively. That technical rationalization of what you did wrong, it'll be useful, but it's not the most useful thing. The most useful thing for a hand like this is like how do you recover and what do the next 10 minutes look like for you, given that you suffer from mistake tilt after making this mistake. That's your time
Yeah.
to shine, not the rationalization. It's counterintuitive, but it's true because you're writing down mental game leaks and then they're coming up here in these hands we're looking at. So
Yep.
it's all
This
tying
is so
together.
useful, Pete. I really appreciate the time here.
No worries. Let's do one more hand as YouTube, so we don't want to go on for an hour, but we'll do one
Yeah.
more. And I'll pick one more of the leaks you've written down here as well before we get to this one. So you've said A6 of clubs incoming, guys. Don't go anywhere. Now you've got short attention spans, but we are doing mental game today too. So you've said playing when tired. I don't have nearly as many hours now and try to squeeze in time, probably to my detriment. So this sounds like a boring leak. Like, oh, he's playing when tired. Like, don't play when tired. Oh, doctor, it hurts when I punch myself in the face. Don't punch yourself in the face then, kind of thing.
Mhm.
But actually, like, this is not such an easy problem to resolve. And a lot of people who play this game have families, jobs, commitments, other stuff going on, and then they sit down and they're like, man, I'm just so shit compared to what I know I could be. I'm like some hollow shell of myself, some shadow of myself, the self I know I can be. So that's frustrating, right? Because like clearly your game is getting stronger, but then sometimes it's just like a crappy D game variant of it shows up. And it's like
Mhm.
how to avoid that. All right, so talk to me a little bit about what your life is like and why this is a problem.
I'm married with a toddler. My wife works an extremely stressful, very time like 60, 80 hours a week job. I also work full time in a stressful professional job with a small child. Like there's some days where I have a stressful day, and like some days I just want to like sit down and play as a recreational player. Like, man, I mean I love playing poker. It's not for that high stakes. And it's like maybe I'd kind of forgive myself here to just like have fun and enjoy the game. And I think I more so have accepted like I know that's going to lower my win rate, and maybe I just don't play for as long that day, or like maybe I play on a different site and have different data sets with like my A game and my D game. I don't know,
Mm,
but like when I eventually move to like for a for profit player,
mm,
that's something I'm really going to pay like close attention to because my D game is way worse than I think other people's D games.
right. Okay. Yeah, so finding ways to blow off that steam because everyone needs that, right? I play strategy games for the same reason. It's like I just want to play team fight tactics. I've had a really tough day and I want to sit and fucking play 4 back-to-back games and I want to do it on my computer so I can click the mouse. And no, I don't want to watch Netflix. I need to do that, right? I'm like that too. I need to
Yeah.
play with the blocks. I need to bash the blocks together sometimes, to get rid of that after work. So I get it, but it's like we can't simultaneously have a goal to make poker
Yeah.
like a full-time thing one day, like actually transition to being a professional poker player, and also have it be the way that we vent and then not know which of those we're doing at any moment and then get annoyed that we're doing one
Mhm.
instead of the other, even though we decided to do one because that's what we needed to do. So it's kind of like a catch-22
Yeah.
where there has to be some separation. And it could be something as simple as on site one, where I'm a pro, right? I'm not pro yet, but I'm training to be a pro. I have an
Mhm.
account and I play on that account when I'm being serious and I track my results on that account separately to this other
Mhm.
account. And you get home from work and it's like, okay, or you stop working for the day and you're like, right, I'm going to play poker. It's like, can I play for 40 minutes as a pro? Then I can fuck about for another 45 minutes or an hour and have
Mhm.
fun. And you do it in a completely different environment. I think that's the only solution. Because I don't want to
Yeah.
say stop playing poker recreationally for fun, and I don't want to
Yeah.
say stop trying to be good at poker. So the only way we can solve that is to segregate it, and we need a clear divide so that
Yeah.
we're not tracking the same hands in the right database. And it needs to be a different site because there's no way
Mhm.
that we could sit there and say, well, I'm feeling like I'm not serious today, so I'll just put these hands in a different database. Like that just becomes like we're manipulating the sample and we're kidding ourselves
Yeah.
at that point. So I think we need to build a wall between the
Right.
sites. Yeah.
And part of that is my goals have changed over time. Like as I've had a family, like I originally wanted to go like full-time professional, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe, but like realistically, maybe 20, 30 hours a week would be like my dream.
Mm-hmm.
But like my career's really picked up and my family responsibilities have really picked up and my goals just have had to change because of that. And so like maybe for-profit play, maybe like 5 or 10 years away where I can get in 20, 30 hours a week in the casino, be like more financially set, maybe work a part-time job and play part-time, but not like full-time. I'm really protective of like I'm scared of my love of the game going away
Mm-hmm.
because I have to play.
Yep.
And I think it's really common for a lot of professionals. And
It
I
is.
want to protect that.
Yep. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter whether that long term goal is to be pro or not, or semi pro, or even just a better recreational reg that makes, you know what I mean? Not a fish, but like a reg that's got
Yeah.
a real job and just does this 10 hours a week. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. What matters is that clearly part of you wants to take it very seriously. Like a hobbyist of chess would take their chess improvement really seriously, or like
Yeah.
I don't know, like football player that plays Sunday league football in the UK, like, plays not professional football, but still take it seriously and want to win that division or whatever. That still has to be separated from you blowing off steam and having just chilling and having fun. So I don't think it matters.
Mhm.
I don't think you should confuse how many hours you're going to play eventually or what your goals are with that narrative. I think it's the flavor of it. It's the sort of mode that you're in that's important there. And clearly you have both modes. You
Mhm.
need to separate those modes. Doesn't matter whether it's
Mhm.
pro or semi pro or amateur at the end of the day.
Got it.
All right.
Thanks, Pete.
Ace six suited, flattening out the big blind, 8-3-4. Check, check. We go for a big bet here. One thing you can do on this turn, this is going to be in my course I'm making soon called Weapons of War. And Weapons of War is like, I was sat by the pool in Mallorca last week and I was reading a book and I was like, man, it was a book about a guy that was captured by the Japanese in World War II and was like in a prisoner of war camp for like a very long time and suffered immensely, more than you suffer when you make a mistake in poker, Chad. Let's just suffice to say that.
Oh, that's a lot of suffering, Pete.
Unfathomable suffering.
So,
And it got me thinking about war. And then instead of like empathizing for this dude, I was just like, Weapons of War. That is the next course. And the reason I want to do Weapons of War is that it's going to be about taking people out of their comfort zone. Using sizes and lines are really good. They're theory approved, but they're also like very alien to most players because they're not the normal
yeah.
inputs in people's Pile Solver or GTO Wizard.
Mhm.
So here I would say you have a tiny pot, you have a giant nut advantage at the very top of range. So you can wield a bet like 3x pot. And you can use that with a hand like this, but you can also use that with a set. And that's your theory game, and then you might want to branch off exploitatively, but the weapon of war there is the 3x overbet to dramatically increase the pot size. Because what does Villain want to do? Villain's range is like condensed, it's keeping the pot smaller, it's capped, it's not generally wanting to play
Mhm.
for 80 big blinds. If he has a jack, he might want to play for 40 big blinds by the river. He doesn't want to play for 90. He doesn't want to play for 103. So
Mhm.
you can either check raise giant here with this hand, or you can lead giant. I'm not a fan of leading B75. It's just too easy for villains range to play against, as is here. I'd rather
Yeah.
lure them into less familiar place. But I get it. Like, one brick at a time,
Mhm.
right? At least you're leading kind of big, but it's not big enough for the needs of this spot.
Cool.
King River, I would probably just overbet, play the hand strength at this point. You could check raise. I don't think it's right here. I think they're a bit more condensed this time compared to last time, right? So this time we
Torn.
do go for the
Yeah.
check. Can we go for the? I mean,
I want to say I wanted to just like, yeah.
it'll be GTO approved, no doubt. I think it'll be GTO approved because check raising flushes is generally GTO approved because they're meant to start reaching down and finding bluffs at the bottom of their range. Man, I just wonder if they'll underbluff if check 2 here, you know? And that's why I might just lead myself. What do you think? I mean, I'm not sold on this, so maybe you can convince me this is right.
It's there are two levels of villains in this pool. There's like the recreational American player,
Mhm.
and then there's like the macho European players, and they're very different. So I don't know which villain I'm dealing with here in this hand, and I think it's dependent on who it is.
Oh, this is villain 17.
Yeah. I will. I yeah, I'm not sure. I would think that overbet is good for, I don't know. I just feel like that overbet might be a little bit overfolded
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah.
And I thought check raise in the moment was just a little bit better because, like, if it was a good player, definitely could find some bluffs. Like they could. The king is going to be like decent for that opening range. Like
Hmm.
I just thought I'd face bet a lot here.
Hmm. Yeah, I think whatever sizing you go for, it's probably going to be overfolded. Like, I think if you block here, it's going to be overfolded. I think if you
Mhm.
B75, it's probably going to be overfolded. And if you overbet, it's also going to be overfolded. Do bear in mind they have just hit a worse flush or two pair or something at some frequency. But as you say, check raise is great against those hands. But that's an argument for overbet if you are betting. Yeah, I don't know. The spot's unclear to me. I can see the merit for everything. What is their bluffing range here? That's the only thing that worries me is I think many of the hands actually there are quite a lot of like new straight draws on turn here, like 10-9 and Queen 10 and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, I think there's enough
Yeah.
air actually. Yeah, I think maybe you've convinced me that I don't mind this. The problem with this is that like we win way less money against Jack X, and I do think Jack X is a big part of their range
Mhm.
when they check back flop and then call it big bet. That's what's
Mhm.
making me kind of want to bet. We could maybe block, right? If we think we're against one of these like strong Euro guys that's going to like try and attack a lot, block will get the call from the Jack instead of the check behind and get a bunch of raises. So maybe 1/3 is better than check raise here. Maybe
I like
one.
1/3 actually. Now that I think
Mhm.
about it a lot.
Might be better against that sort of
Yeah.
player. I think against a really
Mhm.
weak fish or something, you just want to go big. You just want to bet because they're
Vomit.
they're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna commit river blunder theorem, as we say in the Carrot Poker School, and
Yeah.
actually like not bluff bottom of range in a spot where they filtered the previous street. So we don't want that
Yeah.
happening.
And like I've seen a lot of fish like not value bet a king here
Mhm.
for anything.
Absolutely, they really react quite visually, right? They're quite instinctive in that way. They see the third club, the third
Mhm.
green card, and they check, right? So this does get paid off by King Jack. That's the sort of hand that we've just coolered, right? That we want to either check, that we want to check raise against or overbet against. Right. Well,
Mhm.
this was awesome. We should probably bring it to a close now because we're on about 50
Yep.
minutes. But man, we'll get you back on the channel again. It's been a lot of fun. I think the audience is now seeing that there's a real guy under there that he's not just a gauntlet champion. He's not just a Chad of 25 NL. He has his own struggles, his own journey as well. And I think you've shown both sides today, man. It's been great. We've had the
Yeah. I'm a
WWE,
Gemini.
but we've also had the
Yeah.
real you too, which has been good to see.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. This is really great. I had a blast, which was the goal of it. Really just show my love for the game. And thanks for creating Carrot Corner because I would not be anywhere close to where I'd be as a poker player if it weren't for that.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. All right, guys, you know what to do. It's carrotcorner.com, as Chad says, for all the rest of our content, including our subscription service for just $49.99 a month. We have almost 100 videos, I think, on there by the time this comes out. So super sick value. Check it out. And we'll be back here with more content and the new season of 50NL Poker Gauntlet very soon. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.